Hi, everyone. Good to see you. My name is Krista Hayes Pruitt, and I am with BBR BMG Nashville, and I'm the co-vice chair of the CRS Agenda Planning Committee. And on behalf of everybody at CRS, thank you all so much for being here. I have a couple of announcements before we get started. We know it's cold outside, but please do not miss Team UMG at the Ryman Lunch today. There will be shuttles and golf carts outside 5th Ave entrance by Bongo Java and Bob's running continuously. Please also make plans to attend Acoustic Alley beginning at 6:30 tonight. Why is my paper so folded up? Legends D through G, I believe that's here, featuring Rhett Akins, Tyler Hubbard, and Old Dominion. Again, thank you all for being here, and I am happy to introduce Jordan Pettit with the Opry.
Is this one? There we go. Hey everybody, I'm Jordan Pettit with the Grand Ole Opry. Just want to thank you all for being here today. Super excited about this panel and what we're going to be discussing today. 5 years of growth in country music with an amazing group of panelists. Let me first introduce Jamie Markinette from Luminate. Luminate is the preeminent data and analytics company for all of music, so we'll be looking at a lot of data behind this presentation today. Margaret Hart, head of Nashville Label and Industry Partnerships for YouTube. Marcus Dowling, the Nashville country music reporter for the Tennessean. Alina Thompson, strategy and operations and artist and industry relations for SiriusXM Pandora. Alex Kozlov, executive vice president at Mercury Republic, New York. And Mandolin Monchik, Lainey Wilson's manager at Red Light Management. So you can check everybody's bios out on the app. Also during this panel, I welcome you to ask any questions you might have via the app. We will do our best to try to take some questions at the end of this. And without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Jamie to take us through these slides.
Thank you, Jordan, and thank you, everybody. Sorry for that. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming out today. We've got a really great conversation for you. And to kick it off, we'd like to level set where country is today and a little bit about how we got here as well. So we all know that country has really been growing over the last 5 to 6 years, and that's kind of why we're all here today to talk about it. But just to put things in perspective, and what we've been seeing on the Luminate side as well, is that country is the 4th fastest growing genre in the US. You can see here that last year, over 117 billion on-demand audio streams for the genre. That's 8.7% growth. It also beat out the overall industry trend of 6.4. So it's really growing faster. And we've seen this now for several years. Country's been a top 5 growing genre in our record keeping now for 3 or 4 years. It also last year places the 4th biggest genre overall. I think the year before it was 5th. It was behind Latin, but when the dust settled on the end of 2024, we did have country as the 4th fastest growing genre. In the US, just about 1 in every 12 on-demand audio streams is a country music song. So what we're seeing is a lot of growth, a lot of interest, and it is so far been all up and to the right. So you can see right here, when we look back towards the beginning of 2018, how country has continued to grow. Obviously, there was steady growth there for several years. I know that the pandemic kind of spurred a much more rapid growth in 2020, especially as people were working from home and tuning into country music as well. But then you can really see a much bigger balloon in terms of the on-demand audio streaming in 2023. That's where things really broke through. I'm thinking about artists like Zach Bryan and Luke Combs and Morgan Wallen and all of these who started to really drive the genre forward. Then last year, you can see that it even reached new heights as other artists like Post Malone or Beyonce also came into the genre to continue to drive the genre forward. So there has been a lot of growth here. And again, it's been pretty remarkable to see over the last several years. We're also seeing that country artists are getting more popular as well. And this is a really, really interesting note, too. So the amount of country songs that are in the top 100 songs per year has grown. And you see that with the taller bar chart. So these have grown, I think about just about 1 in 3 of the top 100 was a country song last year. Now, the number of artists in the top US artists has remained relatively the same, which points to these artists becoming more popular. However, from the Luminate side, we do think that this is a really great indication for the genre as well, because if these artists are becoming more popular and breaking through, then that sort of opens the door for more artists as well. So we see this as a good sign for things to come, even though the number of artists in that top 100 has kind of stayed the same. And then one of the other points that I want to make, and what we're seeing on the Luminate side as well, is that there is just a more general interest in country, and then also country and Western lifestyle as well. Our film and TV division at Luminate has been following shows like Yellowstone and others that have really started to break in the mainstream, as well as there's just a more general interest in country and country lifestyle. And right here we also have how these sort of programs are also helping artists break through. For Lainey Wilson, we've tracked her on-demand audio streaming in late fall 2022 here. You'll see the album release, but then the yellow lines are also when a new episode of Yellowstone was released, and you can definitely see how this helped to drive overall streaming and awareness for Lainey as well. And then continued to sustain once it reached that point. So a lot of really, really great things for the genre.
So that's really, let's drill into this slide a little bit. Like, we can see here where Lainey's stardom coincides with this, her rise to stardom coincides with this, with the episodes of Yellowstone, but not only that, the level that it sustained after that. Marcus,
Yes, sir.
You had a front row seat for every step of the way with Lainey and interviewed her multiple times through the years. What do you think? What stands out to you about that slide?
So I'd say that it's all funny because I'm standing at CMA Fest and I'm told that Lainey's a guest on Yellowstone. And it was like watching somebody's eyes like light up to the idea that they could be a superstar. That was the moment. And what occurred alongside that is that you had this mix of like her popularity growing alongside country as a lifestyle moment happening. Then she goes viral on hip hop blogs because people looked at her, and then all of a sudden they realized that she's a human being and she has body parts and things happen and people got excited. But then what happened even deeper is that there was content that followed that. And that's the key to country music's rise, is that we make songs in Nashville. Songs that connect with people and describe lives, that describe the content and the TV show and the lifestyle that people were getting into. And when that happens together, it creates a super bomb of a moment. And then when the artist, who has a dozen years of experience in town and is uniquely prepared for the moment, is able to rise to the caliber of the moment, and then incredible things happen.
That's really interesting. And so we're not going to talk about Lainey without talking to her manager.
There it is.
And I'm sure as you were prepared for the Yellowstone episodes and everything that was happening, I can only imagine what all you had lined up around that to maximize that moment. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. It was fun to look back at the series of events, and I made a little list because it was so much firing in a short amount of time. But the Q3, Q4 of 2022 rise for Lainey, I think, started with her CMA nominations. And it was the first year she had been nominated, and she was the most nominated artist with 6 nominations. And so that got good press pickup, and we had a lot of curiosity starting to bubble up because it was like, what? Who is this girl? It's the first time. Like, where's this coming from? And then there was like a CMT breakthrough artist, and she was on tour with Luke Combs. We announced an album. We activated it in every way, from like listening parties to doing live stream with Amazon at their Amazon house. And so we released 12 songs on the record initially at the end of October. On November 9th, the CMA Awards happened. She won New Artist and Female Vocalist. On November 13th, the first episode of Yellowstone aired, and she did a TikTok live stream with CMT. And one of the things that we have, I think, done well, and it really started with Yellowstone when she got her first sync in season 2, episode 1. We posted it everywhere. We were like, this is awesome. And people were just kind of like starting to realize what the power of Yellowstone could do from what people were seeing with Whiskey Myers. And I think we just started talking about our involvement as much as we could. So like doing the TikTok live stream with Yellowstone, it's like we could have just been like, oh, we have this thing airing tonight, but instead we tried to just capture people any way we could to feed into the hype. If we were excited, maybe we could get other people excited. So that was November 13th. The first episode aired. The next week, on November 20th, Lainey performed Smell Like Smoke in the episode live, and we released another version of the album with Smell Like Smoke as an added track right after that. And we had Lainey played everything live for the show. So initially, that wouldn't have been picked up on Shazam because usually it picks up the master recording, but Apple worked with us to redirect the live recording to the master so that we could really capitalize on that discovery. And that's like, that's just the people that took out their phones and actively were like, what is this song? And that number is like validating, but also gave us the ammo to go to Apple and our other partners, like, look how much traction this is having. And then the next week we did another new song and another version of the album with new friends. That was just a sync. It wasn't a live performance. So like every time there was a moment, we touched on it from a bunch of different angles to, just make the moment seem as big as we could.
So like tons going into that whole picture on Lainey's Rise, right? But what an amazing job y'all have done. Obviously, she's giant now. So we just got a really great example of what a core country artist did. But let's go back to some of those earlier slides. We saw streaming is up to a whole, but country growth is over-indexing to become the number 4 genre. And the streams are nearly 4x what they were just 5 years ago. Country artists are gaining popularity. So I want to take it over in a different direction we got a great example with Lainey, but there were so many crossover moments that have happened in the last couple years. Like I remember, 10 or 15 years ago when it was like the minute somebody tried to cross over, it was like, you can't do that, you're not country anymore. And now we're in an era where this stuff is great for the format and moving it forward. But Margaret, what kind of impact do you think the pop crossover moments had on this data and rise in country?
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to say, in addition to what Mandolin was saying earlier, that I think the visual storytelling for Lainey was there in her own personal brand, so it wasn't that Lainey was kind of overtaken by her time on Yellowstone and that, it became hard to differentiate the brands. I think it was so natural to her brand, and the videos that she was making, the music videos and the shorts and all of the content was so in keeping with that brand and in keeping with that lifestyle. It was really beautiful to see how it all worked together. Sorry, now I'll answer your question, Jordan. So as far as kind of the pop crossover moments, I think we've all seen a lot of that in these past 24 months. for YouTube specifically, you know, we sit at 2.5 billion monthly active users globally. We're a massive global platform, and so I think for me, it's been really, really exciting to see how the Beyoncés and the Post Malones and all of the others have really expanded our audiences to new markets and given me new opportunities internally at YouTube to say, hey, this isn't just US, Canada, UK, and Australia, it's going far beyond that. And actually, Illuminate released some data recently pointing towards Gen Z in places like Sweden, Germany, and South Africa really leaning into the country genre and listening to the country genre. So this is just opening up so many lanes for me internally to start having conversations about country music outside of kind of what you believe the core country audience to be. So kind of in response to this, we've been able to create kind of playlists outside of our core country playlist. So our core country playlist being Country Hot List, Country on the Rise, Country's New Crop. We now have a playlist, my personal favorite, called I Don't Like Country But. I'm sure we've all heard this refrain. I don't like country music, but I like fill in the blank artist, whoever that is to them that is country, but they didn't know they liked. And so that's been a really fun playlist for us to kind of bring in these new users and bring in these new listeners who are country curious and kind of get them in the funnel. And then, you know, while sticking with our core country playlists, of course. And then our playlists like Pop Meets Country have become hugely popular. So just really leaning into Gen Z, leaning into country more, but also caring a little bit less about what genre they're listening to, and kind of feeding them what they want to be able to kind of really discover on the platform.
Thank you. Alina, do you have anything to add to that? Like, what do you think some of the reasons we're seeing the increase in country streaming on demand are?
Yeah, I think to piggyback a little bit on Margaret, the crossover stuff happening is amazing, and it's going to certainly contribute to some of this like 4x growth we're seeing, the expansion of the audiences, the pop, the hip hop. And when you look at on-demand consumption, you know, right now country's really taking off, but previously when streaming was really taking off in the beginning, you saw that pop and hip hop audience really lean into on-demand listening, and those were the genres really driving it. So now our genre is a little bit of a slower adapter, and now's kind of our time to come around to this, and we're also collaborating in these other spaces, and some of that audience is coming in. Some of that really heavy on-demand listening is coming in. So I think that's part of it. I think you also see with those collaborations just our sonic landscape evolving as a genre and becoming more inclusive of a lot of types of sounds. You know, the playlists that you have, you know, that I might not like country, but I like this. We've really welcomed a lot of kind of changes to our sound, to our format, which I think is exciting, because when you look at the landscape of our genre, from something that is, you know, really genre bending to something that is really truly rooted in so much traditional country like a Lainey Wilson, you see this tide raising all ships. So I don't really see it taking away from this authenticity that the country genre has, because I see some really wonderful things succeeding, but I also see us welcoming in other people who are excited about our format and what that can bring to them and what that can do for our sound. So I think that's really exciting for us, and I think part of what's driving this consumption. And it's interesting to look at, because we are typically as a format a little bit slower to some of the trends, a little bit slower to some of the technology and how things are being consumed. So to see this kind of spike now for us is really exciting, and I think something we need to take into consideration, because terrestrial radio is a really important part of our genre, and I think something that is arguably maybe the most important to our genre versus some other ones in the way we have upheld it and how important it is to artists. But it is something to be considering right now, that this is a trend happening at a very fast rate in terms of how music is being consumed in country.
I love that. We've seen that on the Opry side, like especially as you talk about the sonic texture side of things. It's like the Opry today does not sound like the Opry of 15 years ago. It does in many ways, but we've embraced and been really meticulous about embracing those new sonic textures that are expanding the format. But then we also have a new artist like a Zach Top that's coming in that we've been championing now for 3 years plus, and it's like that's right in the core of what we've always done, you know?
And I'll say, sorry, and on the note of the Opry, it's obviously a big part of Lainey's story, and we've been loud about our affiliation, but I don't think it would have gone as far if you guys hadn't been doing what you were doing with like diversifying the people that were participating. So it's just interesting to see like the people that have roots in the genre are really important, but if you're not bringing other people in, like there's no new people to care. So.
And that's the perfect segue for me to kick it over to Alex, who we got to work on with Post Malone's debut and made a Night of Magic back on August the 14th. But Alex joins us from New York. Thank you for making your flight yesterday. We appreciate that. Good to have you here, Alex. But you've seen it firsthand with Post Malone, as Alina kind of talked about. Some hip-hop elements being here. Posty, coming from that world, you work with artists in all different genres. Does country, now that you're so ingrained in it with also Jelly Roll, Morgan Wallen, Post, some of those small artists like that, do you have, does country remind you of any other formats that you're working? Are you seeing any similarities?
No, absolutely. And originally one of the things that attracted me to the country world is the community and ecosystem you all have frankly built. Country allows artists to incubate and grow kind of at their own rate with the media personalities you have, radio programmers, radio shows, different communal events, the award shows, all of the kind of like the governing bodies and different ways you all support your artists, your songwriters, your producers, like you celebrate every aspect of it, and have built this community that I use this analogy a lot of like, I think what has really hurt rock and alternative personally is that there aren't rivers for them to sail down to incubate. Like you basically just go right out onto the open ocean as like a rock and alternative artist, but in country, you can really kind of incubate in a river and develop fans before you hit the open ocean. And I think that's why we've seen this big country boom, because there has been so much time for artist development to build fans along the way, to build proper collaborators with producers, writers, and other artists, etc. And I think in ways, country is almost like a mirror image to hip hop. In that, like, to me, hip hop is like Netflix. Like, fans become fans of hip hop, and every week a new artist is served up, just like a new murder documentary is served up. But then when Kendrick drops an album, that's like Stranger Things season 4. And country is similar in that way, where you have your established franchises, if you will, but then there's new artists popping up all the time, and people are subscribing to country because not only is it music, it is a lifestyle, and Yellowstone really put that in people's homes in a highly sophisticated way. And frankly, I think most people in the world are kind of blank. They're looking for interest. They're looking for an ethos, and country and hip hop give them that in their own unique ways of, this is how you dress, this is what you're into sports-wise, these are the teams you root for, these are your activities, and this is the soundtrack to your life now. And I think that has really helped build up country. And you talked about Post Malone. When we were starting that campaign, our main thing was we need to endear Post to the country community, we need to be respectful of the traditions, and we need to make the album here with some of his people, and then Nashville writers, Nashville producers. And we really tried to tell the story of, like, we did a writer's round at the Bluebird with Lainey Wilson. Thank you, Mandolin. And that was one of his first trips to town. And then the next month, he did an underplay at Marathon Music. And then the next month, when the album came out, he did his Opry debut. And it was kind of building and building and building into the, now he's accepted into the country community, and we're gonna come with the album. And it was really, how do we crawl, walk, run, and be as respectful to what country has built as possible?
And Stagecoach last year.
Stagecoach as well.
I remember that set. They played a full set of country covers to an audience that was hearing Tim McGraw's "Don't Take the Girl" for the very first time.
And that was
like,
absolutely
whoa.
to show that it was something he was raised on. That was part of the storytelling of, he's not just coming into the top right now. This is what he was raised on. Those were all songs that his mom played in the house that he fell in love with. And then Tyler Childers obviously being a more modern influence that he's a fan of, et cetera. And we really wanted to showcase how he's like this encyclopedia of music, and especially country music with that.
I love that part where you're talking about like how country shares an ethos with hip hop, because it's like sometimes when you're in it, you don't realize you're in it. But seeing like how cultural hip hop is, and thinking about everything that the hip hop culture embodies, it's like, oh wait, yeah, we actually really do have a culture, whereas like EDM doesn't. Like really, like what do you do in that, you know? So.
I'll take you to a Brooklyn warehouse at 3 a.m. and you'll find out
Yo,
what
that's
they do.
real talk. That's real talk, my friend.
I
For
would have
another
taken
panel,
you
Jordan.
up on that 15 years ago. Marcus,
Yes,
do you have
sir.
anything to add to this?
Yeah, I'd say that there's a mega concussive moment that occurs when you take an artist that is adept in hip hop and you bring them into the country realm with a country artist who is adept in understanding hip hop culture. You create these moments where the connections become stronger than the song, and that connects with people. And people have a herd mentality. And what we've seen here is that with an artist like Post, that herd mentality is unprecedented. It started initially with Morgan and Lil Durk with Broadway Girls, and we kind of saw a general sense of what it could be. Like, Lil Durk is available to be at Jason Aldean's bar at midnight, and he's gonna come in and shoot a video. Wow. Then it turns into Post Malone's gonna come to town for 11 months and hang out at Losers and make a country record with Ernest at 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Now, even deeper, we've gone country to hip hop to now into rock when you see Post go on SNL and sing Nirvana. And you go all the way across the board now, and somehow country is at the core of all of that because he's in a pearl snap. So this is where we are right now, and it's an incredibly exciting time, and it speaks to the mega concussive power of what you could do when you have country at the core of it, because we're 100 years old. So that's kind of the superpower that country has in that conversation.
One thing that came up, I think, as we were talking about this in a prior conversation, was somebody had mentioned the importance of non-country music-related conversations, like conversations that are happening out there in socials that aren't necessarily related to their music directly. Like we're seeing it with like, is Riley dating Megan? Is Zach Top Alan Jackson's
They're
son?
not?
Is
Yo, you're blowing my mind right
I
now.
thought you would know, Marcus.
you know, Laney's butt making the hip hop blogs, everything
Yes.
else. Does anybody have anything to chime in around that topic on?
I mean, the hip hop blogs definitely helped us. That was a very
Shout out to
nice,
Shade Room.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if Yellowstone is on this end of the spectrum, it hit at the same time as her butt going viral, and like the hip hop blogs are on this end. But it's also like, I was just thinking about it up here. Oh, thanks. It's my first time performing. But as listening to everybody talk, it's interesting the importance of like the church and religion and hip hop and country, and then back to the ethos and the values, and but I think that's totally like just direction, and actually back to the hip hop blogs and Laney's viral moment. The first viral moment we had was back in 2019 when she put up a video on
Up.
her YouTube page with Blanco doing the Get Up, and that went up on Laney's page, I think a week before it was distributed everywhere, because I think it was on SoundCloud for a minute.
Yep. And
we got like 20,000 new YouTube subscribers in like a week, and we were like, oh man, that's like, I mean, we told everybody. We were very excited, but that was, people were enamored with like the way she looked, and were making the comments like, girl, you're thicker than a Snicker, or, you know, look at that dump truck, or whatever. And it's like, it's silly, but it's like they're using slang. It's all like a culturally relevant. And that's like, at least you need the cultural relevancy to like pique interest and just like let people enter the chat. And then you got to have everything else set up to keep them there.
I'll just pop in and say very quickly, one of the fascinating things about both country and hip hop and the intersectionality in relation to this conversation is that they say don't read the comments, but these are people that read the comments because they want to talk. And that's the thing, is that this is a very conversational space, and we can't lose that in any of this. Like, the conversations that occur here are voluminous and very important to how this whole thing spreads virality.
Jamie, you want to take us through the next segment of this?
Yeah, definitely. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the audience as well. And from the Illuminate side in our research and our consumer research, we've definitely seen that there's been some changes in the audience. I know that we've mentioned Gen Z and the opening of ears and kind of pushing the genre forward. But as well as the genre has been growing in terms of on-demand listening and leaning in, we're also seeing that the audience is also growing younger as well. We're seeing more Gen Z, particularly Gen Z females, who are being drawn to the audience. You can see a quarter over quarter look here on the slide of Gen Z telling us that, hey, we listen to country music. And so this has continued to grow. Along with that, we are also seeing this new fan emerge. And I think that we started documenting this on the Illuminate side in our 2023 mid-year report. But, typically, the country consumer leaned a little bit older. They were more physical purchasers. I think that was mentioned as well a little bit later, to adoption of streaming. On average, the country consumer does still tell us, that they are AM/FM radio listeners as well. When we start zeroing in on specific artists, especially those ones who have really driven the boom over the last couple of years, we do start to see a little bit of a different fan emerge. Now, that fan is younger. You'll see Gen Z and Millennial for each one of these artists. And then these fans also tell us that their number one consumption is music streaming. So these are the ones who are really powering these as well. And I think it's important to also remember and think about, when we are talking about country expanding to international territories or starting to grow bigger, the fact that we do have DSPs that are, universal and all over the world, it really makes the sharing of music very easy. And so that is helping to propel the genre into these new places as well as it continues to grow. Just looking at the Gen Z consumer a bit as well, I wanted to zero in on a couple of points here. They do tell us that they are over-indexing in short-form video platform use. Particularly, we are seeing that country music fans, especially the younger ones, are really tuned into TikTok. They're actually, in some ways, more tuned in than other Gen Z listeners. They're also tuned into Instagram, so you're seeing these short-form platforms with short-form capabilities starting to take hold, while the Gen Z fan tells us that they're just in line with the average American for Facebook use. In terms of music discovery, there's several different ways they're discovering music, but I really want to zero in on where they're over-indexing for that discovery compared to other listeners. And a couple of the places are obviously they're finding out via playlists, they're finding out being streaming services or social media. But this friends and family piece is really, really interesting to us, as they're indexing with recommendations from others, from their trusted sources. They're really kind of involved with this community that has been discussed in terms of country music as well, where they're really tuned into the conversation. They're getting recommendations from those they trust in terms of new listening, and they're actually more apt to do that than other listeners themselves.
So that's really great info, and so right now we've got Gen Z of country listenership is increasing. There's younger streaming fans coming into this genre day by day, and even over-indexing are Gen Z females specific to country listenership. Alina, how important of a focus should Gen Z be for country?
I think it should be a huge focus for country, for business in general, right? This is a younger demographic that is growing up, that has disposable income, that will continue to have more disposable income, and looking at how they consume content and media and music, and the type of content and media and music they consume, where they consume it. I think those trends are going to be important for the success and growth of really any business, but certainly in country. And I think it's going to take a different lens on how you approach that depending on the format you work in and the space you work in. You know, are they a growth audience for you, or are they already part of your core audience and you're looking to sustain their attention and keep them there, right? If I look at something like a Spotify, I imagine their core audience probably has a significant portion that is Gen Z already. But if I compare that to something like a Pandora or a SiriusXM, where our core audience is going to skew a little bit older, we see them as a huge potential growth opportunity. So you'll see, you know, anything in the music space, but the latest example would be, you know, we partner with like Alex Cooper and the Unwell Network for the Call Her Daddy podcast. So those are ways where we're diversifying content to account for a growth segment that we want to be a part of.
Yeah, I thought that one slide showing kind of where Gen Z indexes across the social platforms, like they're above the mean on every single platform there is, which means they use social media way more than any other demographic. And when we're talking about the 15 to 25-year-old sector, you know, it's like TikTok is so important. Like, what a huge conversation that's been. Is TikTok gonna go away? Is it here? And what does that mean for the music industry? Do you have something to add?
The only other thing I was going to note, just because I thought it was so interesting, again, seeing these slides like it was the first time, and I know I saw these in the panel prep, but it really is mind-blowing because you're looking at these slides and it's telling you that millennials and Gen Z both primarily are consuming music and streaming. And you know, there's a lot of narratives you can take with that, but it's important to consider. Like, this is the future of our format and the future of how it's being consumed, and to know that both of those demographics, that covers a pretty wide range of age, are predominantly consuming there.
Alex, you're a marketing mastermind. Let's talk to you for a second. How important is the Gen Z listener and how you market either a new artist or a superstar artist, any of the artists in your world?
Well, I would say first off, every time I say Gen Z, I age about 10 years, so I'm about to be 120 by the time we get out of here. But I guess to start, touching on what Mark has said about the comment section, one thing I like to say is, like, the key to the internet is momentum. Momentum is the hardest thing to get on the internet. But if you get momentum, then nothing else really matters with the internet, right? And how do you get momentum? It's conversation. And how do you get conversation is people asking questions. You know, people see Lainey Wilson on a hip hop site, they're like, who is that? What's her deal? And that conversation, really, it's been interesting to see the iterations of digital as far as, like, first you had, you know, the written blogs, right? And they were talking at you, so to speak. And then you had YouTube, which provided that comment section for people to discuss the entertainment. And TikTok has basically been this iteration where entertainment is now interactive, right? It's no longer the fan conversation in the comment section. Fans are the entertainment, how they're using the song, how they're molding it. You know, it's almost like we're not necessarily releasing songs in their final form. We're releasing, like, clay to play with, right? Like, the videos fans make, the sped up, slowed down, things like that, it's analogous to, like, how movies and TV now break through with GIFs and memes cut out of them, right? Like, that's how most people find out about visual entertainment. And so TikTok is like the town square of the internet. You know, it used to be like dancing videos, lip sync videos, but now there's food talk, there's golf talk. You know, people go there to find these niches, if you will, and one thing we like to say is the riches are in the niches. And so how do we build up those communities? And, you know, Gen Z, you talk about why it's important. I'm 50 now, by the way, if you're keeping count. Gen Z, why it's important is, if you think about it with streaming, the song that has the most amount of streams for the most amount of days wins. Like, it's kind of like that simple game, right? And so we can't rely on someone to stream the song once. We want people to stream the song 5 times in a day. That's gonna be Gen Z. That's not gonna be adults, right? Like, Gen Z are who are going to consume like crazy and have that fandom and post about it and tell people about it. And so that's why it's really important. Obviously, there's a long tail they age into further fans, et cetera, but they are gonna be much more rampant with their consumption than any other age group. And what's interesting about TikTok is they're there for entertainment. They're not there to be promoted to. So with our artists, like Noah Khan, who I work with, really, we've tried to build a narrative through short form of, hey, I just wrote this song and he plays it on guitar, what do you think? Then we take them on a journey where he posts the demo. And then maybe we post a demo of another song and fans are like, no, we like this one more. And there's reaction videos and people cover it and Noah reacts to those. And then we post the midst of the song. Should we release this? Get the conversation going. Is it gonna come out? We create demand. We release into demand. So we're effectively working the records before they come out digitally, just like they work to radio, obviously, after they come out. And so it's like, how do we build this up into a fever pitch for then when it's time to take it to radio, DSPs, et cetera, where there's this whole conversation and narrative that's happened online already. And so that we can get that momentum and release into demand. And now I'm just kind of ranting, so I hope I've answered somewhat of
It's
a
a great
question there.
rant. I could listen to it all day.
Just keep rambling if you would. Just, we're here for it.
Oh, wait, I actually have a point to make. I was going somewhere.
Yeah, man.
I think one of the underrated things about TikTok, and a lot of like, we're past the point of like the TikTok artist, right? It's kind of like if you're not on TikTok now, I can't guarantee you're gonna be an artist. But what's interesting about TikTok is it has put lyrics on Front Street. And like, obviously they flash on the screen, but kids lip syncing them, they're going and looking them up to make sure they know them. But then there's this third level of, if a kid is posting like their summer vacation recap video, they don't want to use a song about death. So they're going and actually analyzing the lyrics and understanding what the songs are about. Now, what does that mean for country music? Let's be real, y'all have the best lyrics. They're the best written, best made songs. And so I think that has provided a real appreciation for country music. And you see it on like the Genius charts of the most searched songs. The lyrics are really, to me, what the trend is in music. And, it's like, that's why we had like Noah Khan blowing up with Zach Bryan, and then Taylor Swift, I think, reaching all new levels with younger generations. It's all tied to the lyrics and how people are soundtracking their lives in that way. Now I'm done.
Margaret, what do you think about Gen Z's listenership of country and what this data tells us?
We love Gen Z at YouTube, very fond of them. So I think from our side, we're kind of obviously thinking about generally as audience building, as Alina was referencing earlier. It's an incredibly important part of the demographic for us to be supportive of and break into, but kind of two specific ways. So YouTube Shorts now has 70 billion views daily, so it's definitely becoming a significant place for growth and discovery. And one artist I often reference is the Castellos, and I think this kind of ties into something Alex was saying earlier of having the audience there and waiting for you when you release music. So the Castellos had a really, really strong and consistent short strategy. Before they ever had one piece of original music out, they were releasing shorts, they were doing silo sessions, they were basically doing covers in a silo on their farm where they grew up that were beautiful, and by the time they actually released their first track through Warner Nashville, they had over 100,000 subs. They've stuck with that, and today they actually have 351,000 subscribers on YouTube, which, just for context, typically someone with around that subscriber base is probably 5 to 7 years into their career. So the Castellos have really shortcut to that growth and that audience on YouTube by using shorts and all the tools we have available and using it consistently. So I always love to talk about them when I'm kind of talking about Gen Z and consumption and discovery, because I think they've really done a great job. The other interesting thing we're seeing is that the YouTube app on living room, so on your television, is the most popular way to watch TV. More watch time than Netflix. It is incredibly, incredibly popular. I'm not talking about YouTube.
That was really interesting to me when you told our panel that. I was like, wow.
It's
guilty.
So I'm not talking about YouTube TV. I am talking about your YouTube app on your television. I am always super clear with that. So I'm going to reference my numbers here, but more than 1 billion hours of YouTube are watched on TVs every single day. YouTube, as an app, is seen as television for young people. They don't see a
Old
difference.
people too. I'm 46.
Old people too, guys. You heard it here first. But if your 16-year-old is sitting down to watch TV, it's very likely they're going to pull up funny shorts. They're going to pull up their favorite vlogger. So I think it's really, really important to just keep that in mind when you're creating content and when you're thinking about YouTube and Gen Z.
So I want to kick it over to the most stylish man I know in country music.
Man,
He calls me every morning, by the way, and asks for fashion advice. And
always.
I picked his outfit out today.
Thank you,
so-
brother.
I'm glad you guys have each other.
But Marcus, what do you think's happening
I
here?
think that there's an important point about nuclear family listening to country music that is super important to mention here. The idea that parents and children and brothers and sisters listen to country music and they have for 100 years. And the ability now to listen to a song on terrestrial radio and even beyond Shazam, like if you listen to the song and you want to share it with somebody in the car with you, you're going to pick up your phone and you're going to connect them to an app or to a YouTube video or something. And you're going to say, this is what the song is. Like, I can think of Bailey Zimmerman, for instance, who his entire growth is based upon the fact that parents don't find religiously or rock and a hard place or any of those songs to be particularly offensive by a young person singing a song on country radio. So you share it with your child and say, yeah, I like one of your songs too. And that's literally how it happens. It's generational, nuclear family listening. It's a thing that you don't get in hip hop. It's a thing that you don't get in EDM. It's a thing that you uniquely get in country music, and it's a thing that's allowing country music to sustain in this moment.
And I know it seems like we're doing a lot of talk about Gen Z right now, and the reason why is because that's where we're seeing the biggest influx of listenership into country right now. So it's such an opportunity for the format as a whole. That's kind of why we're lasering in on that. Do you have something to add, Jamie?
Yeah, I was just listening to Marcus, and it was reminding me on the slide where we were really kind of dialing in on, how people are discovering that friends and family aspect, and it really shows that, that how the country format is sort of that bridge and that bond between families, speaking
Right.
exactly to your point, and where terrestrial radio could also fit in to that puzzle too, when people are discovering.
Yeah, and it's like thinking back to like Opry history, 1925, people sitting around their radios having communal time with their families, hearing these artists that became popular.
Pan American Blues was a jam, dog.
Just playing hillbilly music. And now it's like, are we back at a time where people are sitting around their tube watching YouTube music and watching music together, Is that what's happening here? But
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, just like I think overall, what we're seeing with Gen Z and the social media use and everything, it's just becoming way less passive. And even just like consuming music, like you can hear it, you're doing something else, you're cleaning, you're whatever, like you're only consuming it with one sense. If you only need one sense to consume it. But when you're watching a movie, you're using two senses, and it makes more of an impression. So like that's part of why I think it has connected so well with Lainey, is like there was an image to go along with all of the what people were hearing, the songs, the PR, everything. But the ability to hear a song on the radio and send a video, or like if you're sharing a video in the living room with your family and friends, it's like, oh, this reminds me of another video. Let me play this next. And it's just like, I think like this trend is just going to keep going because the streaming is where you can dictate and tell your own story, and that's what I think Gen Z wants to do, is decide. And when we were prepping for this panel, something Alex said that I thought was the perfect way to explain it. We're not really in the music business a lot of times. We're in the audience business and how to get in front of them and keep them. And that's really, I think the older generations, you feed them what you hope they retain. And with Gen Z, you want to be in their way when they're ready to make a decision.
and I'm sure you're seeing that show up with Lainey in like such a way, because she's so authentic, and Gen Z loves the authenticity of storytelling or authentic brands that are important to them and such. I mean, I'm sure you're seeing that with Lainey's career.
Yeah, big time. And the back to Gen Z, like wanting to present their own story. I feel like they're the most empowered generation so far because they've been able to present their own story their whole life on social media and texting their friends and just like having easy access to everything. And I think just with Lainey, it's been we've been lucky with the timing and how everything has come together the way it has. Yellowstone rolling out when people were at home, having time to watch TV, having time to have a fantasy, watching people like deal with struggles, and just, I think Yellowstone gave that kind of like ethos and direction the way Alex was talking about country and hip hop and even the way religion does. But it's the horseback riding, it's the ranch stuff, and then it's the Wrangler and the bell bottoms, and it's not like, bell bottoms are not new to Wrangler, Wrangler is not new to Lainey, horseback, like it's all always been there, and in the songs and stories, we've just been able to add in visuals and brands in a way that aligns easily. And back to what I was talking about at the beginning, when Yellowstone hit with the CMA Awards and everything, we had a Tractor Supply commercial running around the CMA Awards and Yellowstone that was in the format of a TikTok video. And it was just a compilation of her doing things like Life Out Here, their hashtag. And it kind of just like creates that affinity that I think speaks to Gen Z so well, because they're like, oh, that seems amazing. I want to experience that, and I want to show people what my own experience was like. Yeah.
Let me ask Krista, do we have any questions from the audience? Just one.
Yeah, we have a couple, but I would love to fit in this one question. I think it's important for sure. What suggestions does the panel have for radio whose ratings have not corresponded with the growth the format has seen? What can they do to take advantage?
Oh, I'd love to jump in on that if possible. Make radio shareable. As a personality, the last personality-driven format is terrestrial radio. Personalities who are willing to create the connection between themselves to the artist, to the song, to the sharing of that, and then telling their listeners who believe in the personality to share the thing that they say is good. That creates the importance of radio as the generation point from which all of these other pieces play into the game. Terrestrial radio is still very important to all of this. Don't think that you're an anathema or some kind of dinosaur. You're not. Just reshift where you are in the format. Like, you're the generation point because you have the physical access to the star, to the DSP, or all of that. I mean, Nashville's a small town. Let's not lie. So think about it and reshift where you fall into that list, and then allow for you to be the generation point for the listener to have their connection to country music.
Yeah, sorry, Jamie, I was just gonna say, I guess it's more of a question, but I feel like a lot of the radio direction is driven from research and the way people are reacting, but is there a way that you guys can, get the data and metrics you need for like advertising partners or whatever, like it's a business and there's a lot of things that we have to consider and feed into, but is there a way where you can measure engagement instead of just reaction? And I think that feeds into like being able to share it, but.
And the only other thing I was going to add too, and it's kind of piggybacking on Marcus's point here, but I think, kind of going back to that friends and family, I think that can also be thought of as trusted source in a way. And if you can fit into the audience's trusted source, they can view you as a friend, those sorts of things, I think that's an opportunity to continue to build this bond because we see that these listeners are really tuned into those recommendations.
I mean, I think from where I said, just take bets earlier. I think I really see that my timeline for a song or a single is really different. than the radio timeline. So by the time something may be hitting top 10 on radio, it's already risen and fallen on YouTube. It's all, so I think if we can, if I think to Mandelin's point, if we can shift the metrics a little bit so that we can be a little bit speedier on the radio side with uptake, I think we would really see a benefit across the board for everyone, including the artists, most importantly, that things are moving a little quicker because they're moving in tandem with what we are seeing happening on the digital side.
I'll piggyback off of Margaret there and just say that I don't think you should expect a different result by doing the same thing you've always done. So I think if you want a different result, you have to be willing to try new things or look at where your format or your station could try a different way of programming or get on things earlier or look at streaming data in a way you maybe haven't before. But I do think, we can't keep doing things the same way we've always done them and expect a different result if the result isn't what we like to see at this point. And then this is just the idealistic part of me that I don't know that we'll ever get to it, but the Nielsen rating feels like a very dated way to measure performance. And I know we're all got wear the shackles and have a boss and have to sell ads, so I say that from a place where I absolutely get it, but I just wonder if there will ever be a world where that doesn't have to be how we judge performance on radio.
We can dream.
It's right outside of your window. It's still street legitimate music, and I come from a hip hop, R&B, EDM background to country music. Country's been a part of my life though since I was 8 years old. It's still the street. Look out your window at the radio station. What do you people like? If Oil Money is the song that they need to hear, you play Oil Money. You just do. It's not rocket science. It's like you look at people. People listen to the radio. They want to know the song. Give them the song. You keep it moving.
All great combo. I want to close this out by, we're going to have to be really quick here, but let's do a little rapid fire. We're talking about the future. We've been looking at trends of the last 5 years, but at this exciting point in country and where we're headed going forward, I'd like each one of you panelists to give us 30 seconds on advice to the room on as we embark upon the future. What's your advice?
Look at what the fans are buying. I would inform your strategy around that, because that's what we're all looking at the end of the day, is what are the fans doing. It doesn't matter what the industry perspective is. We all are trying to sell to the consumer. So don't get caught up with just radio, just streaming. Look at what your fans are consuming and figure out how to feed them.
Alex, what do you got?
To quote Mandolin quoting me, I am not in the music business, I'm in the audience business. And I say that because my artists don't compete against other artists. They compete against everything. They compete against YouTube, they compete against Netflix. We are in a time economy. Fans are not choosing a different artist on the shelf at the record store. They're spending their time differently. They're spending their time away from one of my artists. And so we have to fully understand the audience, all aspects of it, and own that audience and speak to that audience in a way. I would rather have less quantity of fans and more quality of fans that we know in and out, because then we can leverage them and play our game in our way and have a successful business. And to that point, I would say that kids are looking to be entertained, right? Like growing up, I had the OC as my high school show, or One Tree Hill, but now artists need to be characters on the internet, basically, larger than life characters. And I think that is one thing Mandolin and Lainey have nailed, is Lainey is a larger than life character on the internet. It is all these things combined, and it is very clear who Lainey is and can be picked out of a lineup in 1 second.
Alina, what you got?
I would say to try not to operate from a place of fear of the unknown. I think of all the genre formats, country tends to operate almost from this place of fear of, does it fit our sound? Is it country? Fear of, if the artist does this, is it going to be polarizing to their fan base? And I don't say that lightly, because there's a reason I think this genre operates from that place, and it's because we have very loyal fan bases. And these artists can have lifelong careers in this genre. So I don't say that lightly, but I do think looking at the next 5 to 10 years, it could benefit our format to try to move away from operating from that place.
Marcus, you got 30 seconds.
Absolutely. For 100 years, country music has remained dynamic, diverse, honest, and cool. If you dial back country music to its fundamental core, those 4 elements are there. If you play from those 4 elements, you will always be successful. Now, what those things mean can mean different things in 2025, and explore what those things mean.
I think for me, authenticity sells. If you think about the early days of YouTube and what we were vloggers in bedrooms, people working out in their garages, and to Marcus's point, country music is authentic. It's authentic to the human experience, and we tell that through songs. So authenticity sells. Let's stick with it.
Jamie, thank you for the data. Everybody, give this panel a round of applause today. We appreciate you being here, and happy CRS, everybody.
Happy CRS. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jordan.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Jamie.